The carnivore diet eliminates all foods except meat and animal products. Every single day, I get questioned about my vitamin B12 intake. Well, carnivore diet people, how are you getting vitamin C, folate, or fiber?
And a lot of the carnivore diet argument is that, like, oh, there isn't science against it. Well, because there is no freaking science on it, essentially. So
when you have no carbohydrates, one of the things that's most amazing is that there's no crashing. You would eat and you don't feel any different after you ate, other than the fact that you don't feel hungry.
Right.
Like, you don't crash.
Right.
There's no ups and downs and peaks and valleys. It makes me realize like how much better I feel when I only eat carnivore.
Probably hundreds of thousands of people have now tried. I've been all over the world now talking about this, and I get people from Germany and Greece and China and Japan and Africa that have all done this, and they all say the same thing. Look, I was sick and now I'm not sick anymore.
Hey, this is Chris, and in this video I'm going to talk about the myths of the carnivore diet. Myth number one, okay, people say, oh, heart disease is caused by cholesterol and saturated fat, so you should lower your saturated fat. But you see, the whole myth came from, there's a study called the 7 countries study. There's a guy called Ansel Keys. What he did was, he picked 7 countries that fitted his hypothesis. There's actually studies for 23 countries, but he cherry picked the countries that fitted his hypothesis, that said that by eating foods high in saturated fat, that increased your cholesterol levels, and then by raising your cholesterol levels, that causes heart disease. First off, that's a correlation study, not a causation study. And secondly, those 23 countries, they're very scattered on the graph, but he cherry picked 7 countries out of that fitted his hypothesis. And he was a fish biologist and physiologist, not a human one. And also the sugar industry, they paid off 3 Harvard professors, and they hid the studies between the link between sugar and heart disease. They revealed these internal documents in 2015. That it was Sugar Research Foundation that confirmed they had discussed that there was quite a substantial amount of evidence in scientific literature dating back to the 1940s and 50s suggesting that sugar was probably what was causing such a significant increase in heart disease. In 1977, Mark Hegsted, who was actually put in charge of the food dietary guidelines, and he was one of those 3 Harvard professors, and he he brought down the amount of saturated fat. And you need fat, EPA and DHA, okay, the omega-3s, the vitamin F, as it used to be called, the omega-3s, omega-6s, and also you need fat, because if you don't have enough fat, then you run into rabbit starvation that I talked about before, or fat starvation, protein poisoning, where you get too much protein and you get signs like nauseousness, headaches, stuff like that. People actually report back and they talk about that. I was talking to someone about that recently. So they have issues like that, where you get headaches. So if you're eating a lot of lean meat and not eating enough fat, so you need the fat. So that's why you need the saturated fat for that as well. Check out my video on red meat, that goes into details a lot more on these topics. And then also you need the cholesterol. Why you need cholesterol is because you need cholesterol because it's for like the sex hormones, so like the testosterone, the estrogen, the progesterone, so you need cholesterol for that. And also it's found in every cell of our body, cholesterol. And it's for vitamin D synthesis, so cholesterol. So if you ever hear of cholesterol, that's vitamin D. And then also, even in other studies as well, when they looked into it, like the Sydney Heart study, they actually found that when you lowered LDL cholesterol by having like safflower oil, that actually caused more issues than when you didn't. Okay? And also, people talk about, oh, but there's good cholesterol and there's bad cholesterol. Maybe cholesterol is good, but there's bad cholesterol. But that's, but the bad cholesterol, as people say, LDL cholesterol, that's not cholesterol. That's a lipoprotein that carries cholesterol to the cells. Okay, the other one removes excess cholesterol. But you see, the problem is that it's when it's oxidized, it's bad. And when it's oxidized, that's from having a lot of sugar in your diet, especially fructose, and having a lot of oils, plant oils especially, in your diet. So those studies are like correlated and actually showed up. When they showed the rest of the study, then it showed up that it was actually that it wasn't actually bad, and it was actually the safflower oil that was causing more issues in that Sydney Heart study. The lipoproteins that carry the cholesterol, and it's only if the lipoprotein is damaged. And lipoproteins carry other stuff like protein, and it carries triglycerides. So it doesn't carry only cholesterol. So it's if the lipoprotein is damaged. Then the second thing, fiber, okay? So people say, oh, you need fiber for to yield short-chain fatty acids, okay? And everything. And people saying, oh, constipation, to ameliorate constipation and all. But you see, fiber is, why this whole myth about fiber came around is because in the 1950s and 1960s, there's a guy called Dennis Burkitt who was a surgeon, and he went to Africa, and he found that in Africa there's lower rates of, compared to the US for example, lower rates of diverticulosis. And he correlated that, oh, they poop more. So because they poop more, then he put the two together and thought that that's why, okay? But that was just a correlation study. And when you look into it, there's actually a study out that people have less bowel pain and everything, and constipation and all. When you looked into it, there's 63 participants in a study in 2012 that came out, and they actually noticed that 41 people ameliorated the constipation when they had a low fiber diet. Okay, 41 of them did. And also we have in our bodies butyric acid, butyrates, to yield these short chain fatty acids. So you don't need fiber, and that can be gotten, so even if you eat butter or anything that's high in butyrates, they can yield acetoacetate and beta hydroxybutyrates. They're two ones, so you don't need fiber to yield these short chain fatty acids. And also the fiber is made up of cellulose, and that's indigestible. Fiber is an anti-nutrient as well. So people say, oh, but fiber is good because when you're having some sugar, right, it blocks you from it blocks you from getting the sugar too fast. So it's good, but also blocks the nutrients. So people use that as a reason for saying that that fiber is good, because it blocks you from getting sugar too quick. But it also blocks the nutrients from being absorbed. And then another thing is, number 3 that we're going to talk about, is that the carnivore diet is lacking in nutrients such as vitamin C, people say. Vitamin C is needed for stuff like collagen synthesis, catecholamine synthesis, stuff like that. But vitamin C, we lost that gene millions of years ago, and so you have to get it from food. Vitamin C and glucose compete for absorption at the GLUT4 transporter, okay? So because they have a very similar molecular structure, right? Glucose and vitamin C. So at that transport chamber, at that transport, the GLUT4 transporter, they compete for absorption. So that means if you're eating a lot of sugar, then you need loads of vitamin C. If you're eating very little sugar, then you need very little vitamin C, because there's not enough to get through that transporter. Okay? And secondly, so basically, if you're eating lots of carbohydrates and sugar, then you need more vitamin C. If you're eating very little sugar, then you need very little vitamin C, because there's nothing to compete with, so you can go straight through the transporter. Meat does have vitamin C anyway. I'll put up the amounts here, okay? Especially if you have it raw, but even if you have it cooked, even a little bit raw on the inside, you're going to save, because heat destroys some of the vitamin C. And liver seems to have the most, okay? Spleen, organ meats. So even if you had a little bit of that, but even in muscle meat, you can get enough. And even Napoleon ordered his soldiers to eat horse meat, because that for the vitamin C. Okay, and even Vilmar Stephenson, he said that the Inuits and all, they ate raw liver and all for the vitamin C. Okay, so you don't need fruits and vegetables. Okay, and then people say, what about cancer though? So heart disease, okay, I can understand. What about cancer, and etc, etc. So cancer, it's going to be stuff like fructose and all. Sugar can destroy and alter parts of cells, and in high enough concentrations can kill cells, because there's a thing called the Warburg effect, after Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg. So since the 1920s, we've known that limiting carbohydrates can lower the energy available to cancer cells. There are actually no meaningful associations, let alone causative relationships between red meat and any cancer whatsoever. The studies that conclude this are rooted in poorly conducted observations, right? Epidemiological studies. And then the last one is that we're going to talk about today is polyphenols, all these, like the antioxidants. Well, did you know that antioxidants, okay? Did you know that they're like anti-nutrients technically? They can actually block the absorption of like iron, zinc, and cholesterol is actually kind of like an anti-nutrient in and of, antioxidant in and of itself, okay? So these antioxidants can actually be pro-oxidant and can cause problems. Flavonoids are considered anti-nutrients because they can bind to mineral ions like iron and zinc, reducing their absorption. Cholesterol possesses antioxidant properties and is essential for cell membrane function, where it protects against oxidative damage. So cholesterol has those properties. If you want more of this, then make sure to like and share, and I'll see you soon.